we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. Thank you to our sponsor for today's episode, East Brother Beer. Located on Canal Boulevard in Point Richmond, East Brother Beer mixes classic brewing styles with precision and modern sensibility to create the perfect Bay Area craft beer. You may have only recently noticed them on your local supermarket shelf, but kombucha tea has been around for almost 2,000 years. Born out of Eastern Europe, today kombucha offers a laundry list of holistic health benefits that has swept the nation. It has become so popular, the Golden State Warriors went as far as to install a kombucha bar in the Chase Center at the players' request. Our guest today is Lila Volkas, who has successfully built herself a career in holistic nutrition. Lila hosts kombucha workshops where she is able to share her knowledge and love of kombucha with the community. Lila, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So one thing I like to ask every guest is, what currently has your attention right now?
Well, something that I've been thinking a lot about, and that's, I think a lot of people have been thinking about, is our overuse of soft plastics. So I have been thinking about how I personally can kind of decrease my use of plastic and how there's more support for just our plastic problem through plastic-free or container-free stores. I don't know if you've heard of those popping up.
I have not.
They're like bulk stores that you just bring your own container to purchase things from food, but also having toiletries like soap or shampoo or conditioner, because you think of everything comes in plastic. And then also some different plant alternatives to plastic, kombucha organisms being one of them. I read an article recently of someone who is trying to use kombucha SCOBYs to make packaging.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So how will that work?
So, I have dried these kombucha SCOBYs, which it's basically just a mat of cells, and you would have to treat it with something so that it didn't degrade in water, but I'm sure that these microbiologists could engineer it slightly differently to be more resistant to water, but it looked kind of like a clear film that there was a picture of a granola bar that was in this SCOBY container.
It's very interesting. It's amazing, like the sciences and what they're really looking at and how they're coming up with different solutions to what we've traditionally always used plastic, right?
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit into your backstory. You grew up in the Bay Area, and what eventually led you into holistic nutrition and to brewing kombucha?
Yeah, well, I first started brewing kombucha when I was volunteering on an organic farm on Vancouver Island, and I was in university at that time, and so I got my very first kombucha brewing organism from the woman who owned this farm, and then I flew back to California, and then I have been brewing ever since. So I would say that my passion for kombucha and educating people around healthy food, that how to make it yourself, how food connects to how you feel, really is one of the things that inspired me to go into holistic nutrition. But combined with my experience brewing kombucha and teaching it, just because it was really fun, I struggled with my own health challenges, some really challenging digestive issues that I then used food to really heal myself, along with some other holistic practices, and that really inspired me to help other people.
The one thing that has always shocked me is how traditional medicine doctors are not taught a lot about nutrition. And nutrition, there's study after study that shows nutrition will solve about 70 or 80% of all ailments out there. And so why is nutrition not at the forefront of medical education?
I totally agree with you. I think most doctors have about one day of nutrition training in their whole schooling, and they're in school for a really long time. And something that I think about when thinking about why isn't nutrition being taught more to conventional medical practitioners is that one, we're kind of it takes a long time for the systems to change, and so that's one. And so it's like, how do you kind of change the whole medical system to be more about preventatory medicine than Band-Aids and medication, as well as who would be profiting from this education around nutrition. Pharmaceutical companies make lots of money through educating doctors on prescribing their medication for type 2 diabetes, for high blood pressure, instead of kind of taking the preventatory route, which would be just eating a whole foods diet.
So why kombucha?
Yeah, so I mean, I fell in love with kombucha because it's naturally carbonated. I love bubbles. I love bubbly drinks. It's kind of sweet and sour. I love that taste. And it has this kind of weird factor to it, which really intrigued me. And now I just have a huge love for the strangeness of making kombucha. But I think that kombucha is a really great gateway fermentation for most people to try who maybe haven't had anything fermented before. You got to
be careful throwing that gateway word around.
But this is gateway in like a positive sense. Well,
other senses still positive sometimes.
Yeah.
So kombucha, like, it's interesting because for so many years you didn't even hear about kombucha, and then all of a sudden now it's like the new thing. You see it everywhere. Our office keeps quite a few stocked in the fridge, but it's been around for over 2,000 years. So what happened? Like, what led to the new boom in kombucha?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you're right. It has been around since, I think, 200 BCE. And I mean, now it's this like multi-million-dollar industry. Pepsi owns KeVita. There's a lot of players here that are wanting to get into the kombucha.
Owned by Pepsi, huh?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really only in the 1990s that, so kombucha was this ancient drink that basically made its way from Asia to Eastern Europe, where it was super popular until World War II, when tea and sugar were rationed. And so it became too expensive to brew anymore. And then it kind of fell out of fashion. And then it's really only in the 1990s that it resurfaced. And I would say that this really famous fermentation expert, Sandor Katz, he tried kombucha, I think, for the first time in 1994. And then we all know GT Dave's Synergy, the biggest kombucha brand on the market, kind of launched his kombucha company, I think more in the small way in the 1990s, but then in the early 2000s, it started to kind of trickle out. And then I'd say by probably 2010, Whole Foods was carrying it.
Okay. So really Whole Foods then, put it on today's map.
Probably.
So what's SCOBY?
So first, kombucha, for those of you who don't know, is kombucha's fermented tea. And so the only thing different between, regular tea and kombucha is that kombucha is fermented using this thing called a SCOBY. So it's an acronym. It stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. And so it's basically a mat of cells that eats the sugar from the tea that you feed it, and then in return naturally carbonates the drink, gives it all of its good probiotics, vitamins, and minerals, and that's kind of how it becomes this health food drink.
Now, does the process of brewing kombucha take a long time, or can you do it fairly quickly? I mean, what's the time frame?
Yeah, so I'd say it's much quicker than making alcohol, but it's not as quick as like making a sandwich. So it takes just a little bit of time to boil water, brew your tea, add sugar, and then you basically let it sit for at least a week. So the fermentation time is about 7 to 10 days. In the primary fermentation, which is with the weird slimy thing called the SCOBY, and then to flavor it, you ferment it for another couple days after that. So I'd say turnaround time would probably be a week and a half.
Okay. So you brew kombucha. You also teach people how to brew their own.
Yes.
So what do these workshops look like? What can people expect? I mean, how can people sign up for these?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been teaching kombucha brewing workshops basically as long as I've been brewing kombucha myself, since 2012. And so people come to me because they're tired of spending so much money on kombucha. Kombucha's expensive, you know, $3 to $5 a bottle at the store versus like 50 cents to $2 per gallon to make yourself. So when people come to my workshop, they learn everything about kombucha that they could ever possibly want to know around the history, the health benefits, and then everybody gets to sample some of my homemade kombucha. And then I even make some kombucha snacks. So I make these kombucha fruit leather snacks that are it's basically like a healthy probiotic fruit leather that is actually made out of SCOBYs. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And then everybody comes home with a kombucha brewing kit to make their own kombucha. And basically, once you get a kombucha brewing kit, it's not just good for one time. You basically have kombucha forever, as long as you take care of it.
Okay.
So 8 years ago, I started out with like my own kombucha brewing kit, and I have shared my kombucha brewing organism with probably over 1,000 people all over the world.
Okay, so it's very similar to like making bread.
Exactly.
A starter. What's it called? A starter kit?
Yes. Yeah. So like a starter. Some people call it friendship bread. Okay. That they like share it. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's got an interesting story about their bread and where it came from.
Exactly.
The Mayflower and everything else. Do you have an interesting story about like your starter?
Yeah. So I got my first kombucha organism from this farm and in Canada, and the woman who owns the farm got her first SCOBY or that same SCOBY from San Francisco in 1992. So this SCOBY is at least 27 years old.
Okay. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, I mean, just the thing that this organism's that old and you're still using it today. It's pretty amazing. Now, you mentioned some of the health benefits to kombucha. So what are those? Because I think a lot of people hear that it has health benefits, but I know a lot of people that don't quite know what those are.
Right. Yeah, so the health benefits of kombucha, I like to talk about three main ones. And the first one is that it's a probiotic drink. So,
and what does that mean?
What does that mean? Great question. So probiotic means that this food is alive. It's full of beneficial bacteria that help populate our gut with an ecosystem of good bacteria that help us digest our food, that help, maintain the integrity of our intestinal barrier, also help with our gut-brain connection. A lot of our serotonin is made in our gut. So a lot of our happy juices, our mood is so connected to like how our gut is feeling. And so we need those beneficial probiotics to populate our gut and also help balance out any possible pathogenic, opportunistic bacteria that might want to take hold. So one example of an opportunistic bacteria that's not so great, if it is in a large amount, is Candida. So that's one example. So drinking kombucha is great because you're getting those beneficial probiotics. And then just like any other fermented food, so some other examples of fermented foods would be like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, cheese, other fermented vegetables. And so integrating fermented foods into your diet, I think, is a really great way to have optimal health. So that's the first health benefit. The second health benefit I like to talk about is that kombucha has antioxidants. So we know antioxidants come from the tea of kombucha. And when something is fermented, I like to think that the volume of the nutrients is turned up, because just like if you cooked your food, it's easier to digest, right? So when you're sick, you don't really crave a salad. You want something like a warm soup because you're not feeling super well. But with fermented foods, these foods are basically pre-digested not by heat, which we usually, cook our foods with, but with these tiny microorganisms. So they're making those nutrients basically locked and ready to go for your body to use. So
So is it like faster absorption?
Yes. So things that are fermented are going to be utilized by your body a lot quicker.
Okay.
And so, again, kombucha is just one example of a fermented food that is going to help give you those locked and ready to go nutrients. And so with the tea, the antioxidants are coming from the tea, and then they are basically more ready for your body to use than, say, a regular cup of tea.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole world of those little tiny microorganisms that we all take for granted. I mean, most of us ignore them. We don't even think about that
Totally.
Yet. They could completely destroy our gut and make us feel horrible, or they can completely save our life. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I talk about those health benefits and more in my workshops. And so if folks want to sign up for a workshop, I host them monthly in the Bay Area and through my website, which is lilavolkas.com, which I think you can link in the show notes, or it's just Lila, LILAVOLKAS.com. And then they can find my kombucha workshops and sign up.
Yeah. And the healthy gut is so important too, and I think it's one of the reasons why dermatologists go straight to it, because so many skin conditions come out of irregularities in just gut bacteria.
Yeah, and also if we don't have, a proper gut function, then we are likely to allow more pathogens to kind of maybe settle in and have nice homes in our bodies than if we had a stronger, balance of beneficial bacteria, which really affects our entire body.
Now, with these workshops, have you developed a community around the kombucha?
Yeah, absolutely. So I love to kind of tell people that whether they, are aware of it or not, they're part of this interconnected web of people who all share the same kombucha brewing organism, the SCOBY. And so
so everyone is a brother and sister. Exactly.
I think it just reminds us that everybody is connected, which is it's a true fact. I have trying to keep up with the people who've come to my workshops, and I love getting emails from people who say that they've still been brewing kombucha for the last 5 years, and they took my workshop, at this time, and they've loved it, and they've shared it with their friends and family. That makes me really happy.
Oh, that's very cool. Now, beyond kombucha, you do more holistic nutrition too.
Yes.
So how does that tie in with kombucha, and why don't you explain a little bit more holistic nutrition? Because again, you hear nutrition, good nutrition, bad nutrition, but then what's holistic nutrition? Is it even better than good nutrition?
Yeah, those are great questions. So I would say that holistic nutrition is looking at the whole body as an interconnected web. So looking at not just what you're eating, but how you're eating. Are you eating in your car? Are you eating while you're stressed out? Are you eating and you're feeling really anxious? So not only what we're eating, but the way that we're eating it affects our body, as well as just our lifestyle. So it's not just about isolated nutrition. We could eat all of the amazing healthy kale smoothies, but if we have unhealed trauma, or we are totally stressed out and unhappy in our marriage, we're not going to have optimal health. So while some of those things are outside of my scope, I definitely take note of what is going on in people's lives, their stress level, their health history, and kind of all have it inform me about what types of nutrition suggestions I give them.
Well, how do you minimize stress? Because that's a very big thing for a lot of people in this day and age, where, especially here in this country, it's all about the hustle and bustle. It's all about go, go, go. I mean, if you go to other countries, it's amazing how their lifestyle is completely laid back compared to Americans. So for Americans, how do you get rid of some of the stress?
Yeah. So I would say that with stress, it's definitely a big problem in our culture and affects not just our mood, but it totally affects how we're digesting our food, which then affects how we're breaking down our nutrients that are then kind of making up our whole body. So it really affects our entire body. So I would say for me personally, finding some sort of mindfulness practice that fits well into your life. I'm not going to tell somebody who's a super busy executive to meditate for an hour a day, like off the bat. I like to kind of start people easy. So, taking just 3 deep breaths before you eat your food, just one moment of mindfulness, of kind of slowing down to tap into how your body is feeling can make a huge difference. Other things that fit it well into people's lives are like walking. Like walking is not like taking a hard hit exercise class, but it can be like a movement meditation of just slowing. It's all about slowing down and finding some way to kind of be an observer of your mind and your body instead of being caught up in your stories all the time. So for me, I meditate daily in the morning, and that's something that really helps ground me and gets me started for the day. And then I also really like movement. So I like dancing and going to yoga, and those are other ways that help me slow down, get me out of my head and into my body, and decrease my stress.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned meditation. That's becoming more and more of a movement now. Mm-hmm. If you looked at meditation 20 years ago, I mean, I think for the most part, a lot of people, if they heard you did meditation, they kind of look at you a little bit kooky. Now it's like, oh, really? You do meditation? How do you do that? And you have a lot more people asking about it. And again, even though that's been around for centuries, mm-hmm. but it's something more and more people are opening their eyes to. I forgot who told me this, but they said meditation today, it's kind of like how running used to be like decades ago, where if you were a runner, people looked at you like you were crazy. Like, why are you running? There's no need to run. Mm-hmm. But then as people began to realize, well, fitness is really good for you and running, good cardiovascular health, all of a sudden people started changing their view on running. And now it's like, okay, well, we know we should run. Whether we do or not is a different story, but mm-hmm. at least we know it's good for us. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like where meditation is going.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like apps that you can use, and now I feel like meditation is being taught in schools, and so I think we're both making it really hard for ourselves with the amount of communication and technology that is integrated into our like modern society, and we need to kind of keep going on that mindfulness and reminding people to slow down, and that it's okay to like not be productive and to just take a chill second, because I think we get into this mentality of like, I'm only valuable if I'm being productive or I'm doing something.
Yeah. And for sure, from a business perspective, I can totally understand that. And it's funny too, because if I've got no emails to respond to, nothing going on, it's a little hard for me to kind of disconnect, because I start having thoughts of, well, am I doing enough for my business? Mm-hmm. What's going on? Like I have that feeling for, a couple minutes, and mm-hmm. it's like, okay, I got to disconnect and then, get over that. So, running the business here. Now that we're talking about running a business, so some of the challenges, obviously, there's the stress of running the business. There's marketing, everything else. With you and what you're doing, what are your 5 to 10 year goals?
Yeah, well, I really enjoy, teaching. That's my passion. And so I think that I am also really interested in how we learn and this, our social structure and how we kind of think about ourselves. So I think, I would really love to start to teach around what I've learned through teaching workshops, through especially teaching public workshops, how to teach a workshop. I'd love to get more kind of meta into teaching, because that's, what I feel like really lights me up and makes me feel really excited. So I would say that
So teaching the people that then go out and teach.
Yes. So teaching teachers to some extent, and also being part of this healthy culture movement in kind of the tech industry, because I'm brought into a lot of big name tech companies to do team building workshops around nutrition. And I just see the companies who hire me obviously have value health and a healthy culture. I think one thing that's really awesome about kombucha is that it's a healthy alternative to alcohol. And I think that happy hour culture sometimes isn't always inclusive for folks who are pregnant or who just don't drink, or who are, don't drink for specific religious reasons. And so I think that infusing the workplace with a more inclusive and healthy culture around the activities that people are doing kind of on their downtime, I would love to kind of continue to educate companies about that, and kind of help other companies who maybe haven't thought of that, and teach them how to integrate that into their culture.
Yeah, and there's a lot of studies that have been done, and this is why you see Facebook, Google, and all these big giant companies really putting a lot of time, money, and effort into health programs, because the healthier your employees are, the less you spend on healthcare, and the more productive employees are.
Totally. It's like a win-win-win for everybody. And so I find it really gratifying.
And you get to drink tasty kombucha,
exactly.
Right?
So besides kombucha, I'll come into companies and do what I call an elixir happy hour. So it is a happy hour full of drinks that aren't alcoholic. So kombucha is one of them, but then most people have had chocolate and love chocolate, but if you drink 100% chocolate, which has also an ancient drink that has been, used ceremoniously for a really long time, you can get kind of like a buzz from drinking 100% chocolate.
Really?
I don't know if you've ever tried drinking chocolate before.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Now I want to.
Yeah. So you can get that, it usually comes in in the form of a bar at baking chocolate that you can purchase, but I would say there's some companies that make more ceremonial kind of ceremonial grade drinking chocolate that is less processed and also sustainably sourced. And if you take that 100% chocolate, put it in a blender with some hot water and maybe some like coconut milk and maybe a little bit of sweetener and blend it up, it makes this like delicious, frothy, healthy hot chocolate that really, honestly, sometimes I feel high from drinking chocolate. No joke.
Okay. Is there a store I can buy that like right now?
Yeah, probably. You could probably go to Whole Foods and get some 100% chocolate and get high off of chocolate right now.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
that actually sounds like a great because today is Valentine's when we're recording, so that's actually perfect. So Lila, thank you for being on the show. Appreciate all the great information. Congratulations to your business, kind of where you're going to, and wish you the best. And we will go ahead and link up your website. One more time, what's the website for the listeners?
So the website is lilavolkas.com, lilavolkas.com, and that's where you can find all of my classes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.